State of the Pork Industry Report brought to you by Neogen. Neogen is committed to being your trusted partner in the swine industry, delivering optimized solutions and technology. For more than 20 years, Neogen has been an industry leader in biosecurity solutions. With a dedicated network of scientists and technical experts in the field, Neogen's goal is to meet the needs of swine producers. To learn more, visit neogen.com or contact your Neogen representative. Well, hey, everybody. My name is Jennifer Scheich. I serve as the editor and brand leader for Farm Journal's Pork, and I have the privilege of spending my days covering pork industry issues and news, as well as telling stories of the people in our industry and exploring topics to help the industry grow. I'm really excited to take a look at the first quarter of 2025 through the lens of our experts, Dr. Kara Hayden, Adam Managers, Randy Keeker, and Brad Eckberg. So, guys, as we get started today, what is the best and worst thing that has happened to you on the job in the last week? Randy, would you kick us off today? What's been the good stuff and the rough stuff of the last week?
Sure. So last week I had the pleasure of going out to DC with the National Pork Producers Council, part of the PLI group. So the best part of that week was getting to see the sights of DC. We actually got to go in the Capitol. Really interesting to seeing all the history and all the lights there. So that was the best part. I'd say the worst part was probably not having the best choice of footwear. With all the miles that we walked, the shoes that I had were not the most comfortable and caused a little bit of pain, but it was worth it. It wasn't. It was a good experience.
Awesome. How about you, Brad?
Well, I'm a pig guy that happens to work for a software company. So with that being said, I'd rather be on a farm, producers, industry affiliates. And last week, I was lucky enough to be on site with a couple of really great swine companies to discuss kind of what their business needs are and other things that could be helpful for the pork industry. Really enjoy those interactions back and forth. And with the software side, it's never ending on how software and hardware can also help you. From probably the worst, the disruption in the markets, when with our global partners, from a tariff standpoint, I guess, if you will, just the impact that it could have on, commodities such as soybeans, obviously from a pork perspective, those most micro ingredients and everything. But, hopefully everything will kind of work out sooner rather than later and won't have too much disruption within our industry.
Yeah, that probably feeds into like what my week was like too. It seems like there's always crazy things going on with the markets lately, and just trying to stay on top of it is not easy for anyone. So, Adam, how about you? What's new in your area?
Best thing I got to do last week, our entire support technical staff spent one day in a sow farm and then a couple of days in the downstream finishing flow. So that was really fun getting to spend time with the technical team. The worst thing that happened last week, a farm that has been PRRS negative for a very, very long time, did break with PRRS and spent a couple of days down there with the team as we're doing a depop, repop, power washing and, cleaning stuff out and just spending time with the people there. So unfortunate that that farm has broken, but we'll get her cleaned up and get started again.
Hopefully, you didn't have any of that going on, Dr. Hayden. How about you?
No, my high low of the week is kind of wrapped up in one thing. So there was a Undercover video that came out about the pork industry last week. My high is that it was not filmed in a Pipestone barn. They actually never released the name of the farm that it was filmed at because they were going kind of more at the grocery chain was kind of the focus of it. But the low is obviously an undercover person got into a pig barn and produced a video to try to make our industry look bad. And so frustrating to see that happen. I think what was most frustrating about this video is there was actually no abuse at the video. So apparently this undercover person couldn't find any abuse going on at the farm. And so what they had to do is take kind of normal things that happen on farm and try to make them look bad. And so there were some aborted fetuses that were fresh, clearly non-viable, like very clearly just happened. And they tried to make it look like this was piglets that were born in the gestation barn and died on concrete, right? We all know that that's not true, but that's hard for the public to understand that. They showed a sow that was euthanized appropriately, was insensible, and they tried to make it look really bad. So I think just a frustrating thing for me to see. It's not enough to have perfect welfare and to not have any abuse or any animal welfare concerns on your farm, if someone gets in, they can still try to make things look bad, no matter how good your farm is.
Yeah, I did take a look at that video too after you shared it, and it's really frustrating to see things amplified and taken out of context. And I guess like what I might also ask you too is like what were some of the things that were true in it, and what do you think are the things that were not true in it? Can you kind of break down a little of the truth versus fiction that was in that video for us?
Yeah, so I mean, none of the video I don't think was manipulated with AI or anything, right? But they showed things like they kept saying like the sows are too long for these stalls. And they had one example, or maybe I think two examples of sows that had some kind of scratches on the back end, but you could see that there was tons of space on the front end. It wasn't a sow that was actually too long. So that was just kind of a lie, and then trying to show these lesions on the back end. Again, the thing about the aborted fetuses, that was a lie. The thing about um, the euthanasia, that was actually very humanely done. It looked like and appropriately done. Kind of the truth was they were talking about gestation stalls and how sows can't turn around. I mean, that's very much true. And so, from a welfare professional standpoint, there are gives and takes to those sorts of things. And so, there's pros and cons to that system. It is not always necessarily bad from the animal welfare standpoint. There's some great things about stalls and the ability to really control the amount of feed. There's all sorts of things. And so, just frustrating to see them just really show the bad side and try to make our industry look bad.
I realize like, we all have some type of touch with this in our different roles that we play. We've all experienced it from different angles. And so I guess why I might open it up to the group is like, what are some of the things that you guys do to prevent this from happening on your farm? Or what are just some bits of advice that we could share with producers? Because I know that one of the things that pork producers say that they care about reading about is just wanting to stay informed about what's happening on this front and being educated about that, because they are worried about that threat that exists out there. So, what advice do you guys have, or what bits of things are you guys doing?
So I'll jump in there, and first of all, I really want to agree with Kara's comments there that it's frustrating to see, normal production practices trying to be taken out of context. And I do think it's great that there was an undercover person in the farm for an extended period of time and not able to get truly animal welfare things on there. So, things we can continue to do is really just educate our employees, educate our new hires, have multiple discussions. And it's just, if we see something, say something, reporting an issue, we want people to report any type of issue right away so it doesn't grow into something larger than that. So I think it just goes down to, you know, the entire team's understanding what our expectations are regarding animal welfare. And then also, here's the things that we're going to do to ensure our animals are well cared for. So just education, education, continue with that.
I might chime in just a little bit. I mean, piggybacking on the education standpoint, I mean, when the first videos came out 15, 20 years ago and stuff, I mean, it was really surprising to a lot of us, right? And having those videos out there obviously does not look good for the industry, and that's just not us. So I think we did a great job from an industry standpoint to really educate those from outside the industry that this is not the normal. We are not like this. It is a very small group of people, unfortunately, that got into our situations, right? That they were able to look at and stuff. But we also, I think, that also opened up doors for many great companies to open up the doors to the outsiders, right? Come in, see what we actually do on a day-to-day basis, right? And how much we actually do care for those animals that we look and care for on a daily basis. And like Adam was talking about from that educational standpoint with training, right? From caretakers to employees. Obviously, then we also have the PQA plus and, different certifications as well. So education is important.
And I would add in quickly on our end, we started with the interview process, kind of looking at ways that we can look for those individuals that maybe have, not good intentions when they're coming into we kind of took a committee approach to those interviews, and it can be somewhat intimidating to a production tech or anybody that's coming in to have a committee of 2 or 3 people asking questions. But and we start off the interview by stating that we have a zero tolerance animal welfare abuse policy, and try to gauge their reactions off of that. And then once we're done, we would like to have a little debrief and talk. Was there anything in that was said or done, or any body language that gave us any pause as to whether we thought the individual interviewing across the table from us was that did they truly want this, or did they have ulterior motives? So just being more aware of that, I think we get into a position where we're really, oh, we need a warm body, or we need somebody in the job to do the job done, and we don't look at those things, or we don't think of those things in the interview process. So by having a committee approach, we just always keep that in the front part of our minds.
Yeah, I think some things that haven't been said yet, like basics, locking doors is super important. So, and hiding your key in a good spot, right? We could probably all break into a lot of finishers just because people hide the key in the same spot. But I think paying attention to people we hire, protecting what comes into the farm, right? I think it's crazy. There's recording devices that can go in glass and all sorts of things. And so we just need to be really aware when people are bringing things into our farms that we know what's coming in and that we're really protecting what gets brought in. I think caregivers should be looking for people that are hanging out in kind of those sensitive areas, especially if they're not supposed to be there. If they're not a caregiver that's been trained in euthanasia yet, they shouldn't be hanging out in the euthanasia or the mortality area. I mean, the kind of things that they're trying to capture are like castration, processing, euthanasia, sick animals, your hospital spaces, kind of all of those areas we just need to be paying really close attention to.
And you also, we were talking a little bit this morning too. What are some of the things as far as like, how do you spot an activist? Because I think that, maybe in our minds, we think it may, this person may look a certain way, but I found that to be very untrue. So what are some of the things maybe like as far as types of people that are activists?
I mean, I could start off. So, like, red flags for me would be somebody who wants to work in like South Dakota and they have no reason to be there because there's no family there, they have no connection. Like, why are they trying to be in South Dakota if they've got gaps in their resume, if they've got higher education, but it's kind of not in the swine space? Like, what are they doing trying to work at a pig farm? Those would kind of be some things for me that I would be thinking about.
And then, that definitely agree with Kara there. And then add on to that is, social media is such an important thing to the next generations and our employees. So definitely doing backgrounds on social media platforms to see if you can pick anything up from that. And then, if employees are in the barn, looking for those individuals who are just kind of stand back and watching, really not participating. That would be a red flag to just go have conversation with that person. And, are you truly just trying to learn something? Is something that you don't understand? But, if someone's just kind of standoffish and doing more observing than being, part of the process and part of the team, I would definitely question that person more.
Yeah, good. Well, I really appreciate you guys opening up about some of the things that you do because I think it's just important for everybody to keep on mind. I think it's easy for it. There's so many things going on. And so you get going on to the next issue, and it's like we can never let up when it comes to making sure that we protect our farms in that way and the people that we let in and what they do and what their motives are. So finding those good people are really key. And I want to kind of transfer over just a little bit because last week was also a really big week for um, the industry from the standpoint of Joni Ernst and some of her colleagues announced the Food Security and Farm Protection Act to protect farmers and consumers from burdensome government overreach. And, we've talked about Prop 12 in this group before. It's something that's been all, on everybody's mind for so long now and continues to be. But, things continue to evolve and change. And so I just wanted to do kind of an update because we were just, hearing about it again as they keep trying to find ways to protect our states from this patchwork of regulations. But Adam, how is Prop 12? Has it changed things in your operation? What kind of changes have you guys experienced in your business because of Prop 12?
just to hit a few of the highlights with Prop 12. So, the cost of production definitely increases as, space requirements increase. You either reduce the number of sows in your barn or you add more barn space. Uh, Whichever way you do does increase the cost of production. And then uh, as far as day to day and management, 24 square feet is a lot of room. So just giving everyday vaccinations or treatments or any normal production practice gives that animal more room, and it does add a little bit of time and labor to get the normal processes done. As far as breeding and movements, and it's something different, but we've got to embrace that change also. And it's here's the rules that we need to produce these pigs by, so we got to figure out how to make it be successful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think our industry needs to, this is what the public wants, right? And so ultimately, we need to figure out how to make this system work. And so for me, from a welfare standpoint, right, Prop 12 has these pros and cons. So we've got this pro if they've got the ability to move around. They've got kind of choice with who they interact with. They've got a little bit more environment they can interact with. I mean, on the other side, we have kind of the negatives of kind of the sow longevity, where we see increases in leanness because of some of the fighting. We see increase of culling and euthanasia in some cases because of lameness. And so, absolutely, there's pros and cons to Prop 12 for sure.
Brad, what are some of the things that you have been hearing about when it comes to the audits? I know that we've heard them talked about a lot at some of the conferences that I've been at this winter. It was kind of a hot topic on the progress of the audits and what they are and what they aren't. So, what are some of the things that you're hearing?
Yeah, I mean, this year will be the second year, right, that we've had these third-party audits that have been coming out, and I think starting off, right, when Prop 12, kind of came to reality that these audits were going to happen, was the unknown, right, and preparation is key for success. The swine industry really worked really well together for with the third party auditing companies and everyone that's involved within the swine production partners, as well as from veterinarians, to really prepare individual farms for that success. Um, it can be very intimidating to have someone from the outside come to your farm and say that to look over your shoulder, make sure that you're doing everything right. And if you're not doing it right, that person can have a direct impact on your company's financial situation. So there's quite a bit of, potential stress that goes with that. But with that preparation, I think that from what I've been hearing, the audits actually is kind of one of those. It actually wasn't too bad, maybe we had a little bit here or there from a documentation standpoint, but really for the most part, I've heard that these audits have gone really, really well, and I think it's a credit to everyone that is involved in the third party auditing companies to really set expectations as we follow those laws that were handed down from us.
Randy, what was the conversation like in DC last week around Prop 12? I'm just going to venture to guess that that got brought up just a little bit.
Yeah, that dominated the conversation quite a bit with the Farm Bill. There wasn't a whole lot of optimism that a solution with the Farm Bill was going to get made, and I guess what I learned last week is a lot of that is some of that's around the SNAP or the nutrition programs that are included with the Farm Bill. And so the good news was I heard later in the week that they're proposing those nutrition appropriations over to HHS and kind of take that out. But I think the biggest positive that I heard last week is what you just mentioned earlier is the separate bill that Joni Ernst's group had put together. They're just then the consensus is not so much that Prop 12 is bad or not so much that it's good. It's the overreach that some of the states may try to tell us how to do our business is what really we want to put a stop to. Is we think we're the best at making the decisions for what's best for the animals. And we've done a really good job of adapting to that with Prop 12. And the point that we tried making to our legislators is exactly what Adam said: is there's more cost involved, and there's more labor that's needed to do those things. And with tariffs and everything else that's going on, the margins are already thin for our producers, and there's more contraction than there is expansion. So those are things that we want to get through to our legislators, that we need some help in trying to get a farm bill passed or some type of resolution to allow us to do business differently.
So, you brought up the L word. Let's talk a little bit about labor. What was the message that you shared with legislators last week on the labor front? Because I know like you're right there in it and it's something that's near
Yep.
and dear to your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. So our big ask, or one thing that we wanted them to consider, was extending the H2A program to allow the H2As to work in the livestock field, because we're not seasonal. So we want year-round H2As, and we would. There's been talk of, if we did get an H2A program, that there might be a cap of like 40,000 visas. We'd obviously we want unlimited cap. We'd want to want everybody to be able to take advantage of that program. So I feel pretty good about that getting pushed forward. Uh, Not a whole lot of movement on that yet, or if it's going to be included in the farm bill, or what direction that's going to go. I think that's more going to be the legislators going to the State Department and seeing if we can get some type of agreement done on that. Uh, so that's where we sit with that program.
That's great, Randy. I mean, I just think from my perspective, I'm curious what you guys think about some of the fear amongst some of our visa employees, or I think we've had some conversations around that at Pipestone. I think we've been able to kind of make sure people understand you're here legally, you're very valuable, like we need you in this country. But curious to see what other people are hearing about some of that from a labor standpoint.
Yeah, here I would definitely agree with your comments there, that there was a lot of angst and uncertainty at the beginning of it, but I think we're getting people calmed down and comfortable that all will be well on that front. And it's just without the visa employees, our industry is really going to suffer. So hopefully, Randy, you guys did just a great job shoving that on, and getting our wants and needs voiced in Washington last week. So appreciate you being there.
Yeah, no problem. One thing I will add that I probably should have used as one of my worst of last week. So I got back from DC on Thursday, but Friday morning I did get an email from one of my TN workers, and he actually got an email from Department of Homeland Security saying that he needed to self-deport in 7 days. So we're working through with farmer law on that. It's showing up. It's an error. He doesn't need to. He's got all the legal documentation to be here. And so we've even reached out to the National Pork Producers Council. They talked with the State Department. They don't know why he received that email. So we did get some information back this morning that there are some others that they have found over the course of the weekend that have gotten that same email. So it seems like it's a mistake in the system, but I don't think we're out of the woods yet for these guys feeling a little nervous about their situation until we can get this figured out.
Not the way you want to end a week, is it, Randy? I mean, gosh,
No.
I feel bad for the stress and the tension that probably causes not only on the specific employees, but also on the greater team, because it just creates this feeling of uncertainty. And, one of the things that I've loved getting to talk to you guys about are things that you're doing in the barns to try to improve culture, make things better, really make it a place that people want to go to work at every day. And so, Adam, like one of my favorite things that we've talked about was I guess I just was a huge fan of this extreme farrowing makeover. Maybe it's because I'd like to be invited to one sometime. I think it'd be so much fun to just see how you guys do this. But have you seen any further return on investment? I wanted to just circle back and see kind of how that's helped you guys out, or if you've seen anything since.
Yep. So the first makeover that we did, that farm was up to weaning a 13.4, and unfortunately, a wild type PRRS virus was introduced to that farm. So we lost the momentum that we gained there, but we did do a second farm, and they were weaning at 12.6 for the previous 8 weeks prior to us. And last week they weaned a 13.5. So that team has really bought into it. They believe they can do better. The biggest thing is they believe they can do better. So I've gone to that farm several times since the makeover, employees are now grabbing me. They're like, look, come look at this or come look at that, or, what do you think about that? So they're just really engaged and really bought into it. So it's been a huge success for us. We have the third one scheduled, Jennifer. So, you know, you've got long skinny arms. So I mean, you can powder pigs and play with babies.
I mean, let's all just be honest. There's nothing really long about me. I'm fairly short everywhere, I'm afraid. So, but I'd still love to learn. So check it out. Well, I'm glad that you brought up numbers too, because I would like to just turn to a little bit of time talking about key performance indicators in the barn. We talk a lot about numbers and data in this industry, and always trying to find ways to benchmark and evaluate the progress on our own farms. And that's just one example of how you guys are using numbers to spur on progress. What do you think, Brad, maybe I'll start with you. What do you think is the importance of making these evaluations and comparisons, and how can this really help a farm make true progress?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of different ways you can look at why should I use benchmarking, why is it important, what's it really going to do. But I kind of break it down into three really key areas. One would be from a benchmarking really drives performance improvements. It's going to show you where you stand and highlight gaps between your current performance and within the industry. Okay, so examples like the pigs weaned per mated female per year. How am I doing compared to my peers and stuff? 20 years ago, when I was in a sow farm, if you had a pig's meat per mated female per year of, 24, 25, you're doing pretty darn good. Well, nowadays, the top 10%, if you would be in that 30 PSY per year and stuff. So obviously a lot of different things that go into that from a health, the genetics and whatnot, but also livability across the board, and there's a lot of discussion on sow mortality and stuff. Where am I compared to my peers, genetic lines, health status, whatnot. And then, from a wean to finish perspective, another one that kind of helps again drive and highlight the difference between your company and the industry would be, from a marketing percentage, where am I at in as far as like in the box, the ideal box from my packer and stuff. Another key area is that benchmarking can really have on your company is it informs strategic decisions. It gives leaders data to make smarter decisions, whether it's about improving processes, inventing new tools, or changing directions entirely. And then finally, it boosts efficiency and it reduces costs. Seeing how others operate more efficiently can really help with limiting redundancies, waste, and the bottlenecks within your company.
I was visiting with somebody, I think it was like last week, and they were talking about data, and they said, we have a lot of data, but sometimes it's challenging because how do you take the data and use it now? So we know what we've done, but how do we use it to help us right some of the challenges that we have? So Adam, are there any numbers or bits of data that you guys use to make quicker progress on the farm, more in real time progress, I guess is what I'm thinking.
Uh, Absolutely, there is. And to couple on to Brad, why benchmarking is so important. And Randy said this earlier. Profit margins are very slim, so we need to use that data to help us make decisions quicker. And that could be the difference between staying open and having to close down the barn. So there's the KPIs are just super important to keep the farm doors open and the company's profitable. How we use KPIs, we try to keep it very simple and in a small number of the key drivers. So, we've got our breed targets, our conception rate, farrow rate, pre-wean mortality, wean per litter. There's just seven or eight of the key ones that we really focus on when we're trying to make big directional changes. And as we are, I call it doing surgery with a scalpel now instead of with a machete. Then we will dive in a little bit deeper on individual KPIs, but just a broad spectrum. There's really seven or eight key production indicators that we use, and then when it's time to do surgery with a scalpel, we'll really dig into maybe two or three of those KPIs. and sharing that information with the team, posting the score, letting them know where they're at, letting them see where they're winning, let them see where their opportunities are, and then engage the team. Hey, our wean per farrow is low. That means pre-wean mortality is high. What do we think we need to do? What are we seeing in the barns? Get the team rallied behind that, and it'll really help you make change.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in from a wean to finish perspective. Something that we're looking at. We always look at mortality, livability, and top hogs that we send to packer. Something that we're kind of looking into now. We sell to 4 or 5 different packers for our customers, and trying to understand truly what their goal or their metric and what their objective is. We sent them. Quicks went to a baseball game that was we were invited, and there was a bunch of producers there, and one in particular was talking about their procedures for how they market their pigs, and they'd go in and take a top cut and wait 2 weeks and go in and take like 75% of the pigs after the fact. And then their theory was, or their research told them, that the pigs perform better or do better on growth and all the other metrics if they didn't get into the pens that often to sort and load. And my thought was, well, is that economical, or is there no value in that standard deviation of tight loads? And I think that varies on every packer. So I'm in the process of reaching out to the people that we work with and trying to figure out, do we need to, what should our goal or our focus be on tight standard deviation, all pigs the same size, or do you want just better efficiency use of the barn? And so that makes a difference too on the labor side, how you're going to go about doing those, how many times you mark and get in the pens and move those pigs around. So that's something that we're kind of try to fish out on our end to see what the best process is. And hopefully we can get enough information back from our packing partners that give us an answer to what is the best way to do it.
Well, another story that I was working on last week is around this topic of the National Swine Health Strategy. So I'm sure you guys have heard about that. It was kind of a point of discussion through the National Pork Industry Forum, people talking about it on both sides. Some were really supportive, some had questions. I think the language changed a little before they formally submitted that advisement. But basically, my take is that we've spent so much time focusing on foreign animal disease because we've needed to do everything we can to try to keep African swine fever and other FADs out. Meanwhile, we've got the Swine Health Information Center that's really been charged with keeping an eye out for emerging diseases. And so, they've kind of been doing a little bit of everything to meet the needs that are out there. But I mean, part of their purpose is to keep their eye on kind of what's coming. And then there became this little bit of a gap that some of the producers kind of rose up and said, hey, we want to focus a little more on endemic diseases that we face and we battle every day. We're sick of PRRS, we're sick of PED, we're sick of influenza. These diseases continue to take away profitability from our operations. And they just wanted to see a national swine health strategy come together to basically help prioritize some of the decisions that need to be made and research and ideas that will best guide the future of our industry. And so I would love to just know kind of what you guys thought about that strategy. Dr. Hayden, I'll start with you because I know that you were, at AASV too, where some of that got discussed before the forum. So is it something that we need, and how can it be helpful?
Absolutely. It's something that we absolutely need. So I would say I'm in full support. And I think we're coming into a time period where there's absolutely an appetite amongst swine veterinarians. And so it was a huge topic at ASV the last 2 years, talking a bunch about PD eradication, Mycoplasma pneumoniae eradication in the United States. I mean, the reality is it was 2004, I think, that we kind of called ourselves pseudorabies eradicated from the commercial population. It wasn't that long ago that we successfully eliminated a pathogen from the United States. And I just think like definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. And for the last 20 years, we've all been trying our best to protect our own herds every year. And we break with disease and it gets frustrating. And so we just need to change the playbook. And instead of focusing on individual herds, we need to start looking at the entire United States. So I'm fully in support. I think endemic diseases need to become a focus.
On that, real quick, Kara, like what does, some producers might be a little bit worried, right, about sharing too much of their information. Maybe they might be held liable or whatever. I mean, what are some things that you could, suggest to people to get more involved, with their neighbors around communication and visibility of what's going on out there?
Yeah. So the great news is we kind of have the precedence in the industry of having had these kind of smaller projects that have occurred in the past. And those have kind of showed us that we can share data with small groups and we can cooperate in these small regions. And unfortunately, when we do these regional projects, though, it's not successful because we bring things into the region constantly. And so we really need, I think, those set of precedents that we can do this together with communication. But we just need to kind of scale things up from there.
What kind of diseases are you guys struggling with? Have you noticed anything rise up a little more than typical, or is there anything that maybe you're not seeing as much as you normally would in the barns?
Diseases we're currently seeing in the wean to finish. I'm hearing a lot of rumblings around the area of a lot of PED that's coming more towards the east of us in Indiana. As far as the PRRS pressure, we're not seeing a lot of lateral transmissions in our area. We're pretty fortunate compared to some of the heavily populated areas of Iowa, Minnesota, and even some of the places in Indiana. So we haven't had a lot lateral transmission. But we have quite a few of our customers that are bringing us wean pigs that are being infected at the sow farm. So I think this year compared to last year, there's definitely a lot more activity with PRRS getting into the sow farms. I don't know what that's attributed to, but we've had some pretty tough pigs showing up at our wean to finish facilities, and even one particular site that was went down in a fire last year, rebuilt, repopped. Figured we were going to get nice, good, clean pigs, and the first pigs before they even shipped out the first pigs, the site broke with PRRS. Again, so it is frustrating for especially those people in the sow farms to deal with that and have your morale go down and then even downstream in the wean to finish when we get those pigs, they definitely are a challenge. Luckily, all of our facilities have shower in, shower out, and I think we it gives us an opportunity to really stress the biosecurity to our team, that making sure that they're following those procedures, and hopefully to keep the pigs from getting any other secondary diseases that would impact them even more.
Adam, what are you seeing?
I'll jump in and I'll give it another go here. So, um, on the sow farms, definitely PRRS is there, and we've kind of done this to ourselves because we've eliminated viruses. And viruses, I mean, they're going to adapt, they're going to change, they're made to survive. So we are making bigger, stronger viruses. So when they do enter the farm, lack of better words, they become a really tough challenge and a bigger pain in the butt. Longer times to getting viruses eliminated, and just the number of abortions and sow mortality just continues to increase as these wild type viruses get bigger and stronger. I think there is a pretty good push for, just micro elimination where we can, getting just removing that from the sow herd. That definitely helps the downstream flow all the way through. But knock on wood, I don't want to say it too loud, but PED has been fairly quiet in some sow barns. I think still pretty active on the wean to finish side, but I think fewer introductions on the sow barns this year.
Quick question for Cara, maybe. Just from a biosecurity standpoint, is that why PED has been popping up more in the wean finish? Because I've heard the same thing, kind of what Adam was referring to and what Randy was talking about it. But are we like shooting ourselves in the foot, or is this something else? Why does it seem to
Yeah.
pop up?
I mean, PD is frustrating. So, right, when I think about like pathogens that I would like to eliminate, right, PD is on the list of one of the top ones because it is fomite transfer. And so much of this we do to ourselves as an industry. I think for the US industry, like trucking is a really big deal. So, this time of year, winter month, we just break so many finishers at the end on dirty trucks. And that just eventually kind of works its way down. And so, yeah, to me, biosecurity is a huge deal from a PD standpoint.
Well, I love hearing most of all like what you guys are kind of doing in the barn just to make the environment better. And so I want you all to think a little bit about what is something that you've done or something that you've heard being done in the barns lately that you think would help another pork producer maybe do things better on their operation. And Adam, I don't know if you've got something to kick us off with.
Um, yep, I'll start with really information sharing. Through our fairway makeovers that we've done, one of the opportunity areas that myself and my team has identified is we need to do a better job of sharing information with our teams, posting the score. Give us our goals. This is where we want to go. Here's where we're at now. I think there was just a lot of disconnect from boots on the ground caretakers every day. Make sure they understand what our goals, what our targets are, and what our opportunities are. Just the more information we can share, the better everybody understands the common goal and what we're after. And I think that's been a really big benefit for us on not only getting buy-in, but being able to explain our protocols are here for a reason. And if we follow these right every day, here's the results that we expect you to get. And when they can reach those goals and exceed those goals, they really just buy into it, and it really spreads and they grab onto it. So information sharing, we all forget what it's like to be, first week, first 6 months in a pig barn, and we just take a lot of things for granted. So don't forget that everybody has started on day one too.
Yeah. And I'll chime in. One thing that we did in the past that we haven't done in a little while, back to what Adam was saying earlier with just the competition, giving them access to the data, is we did a percent in the box competition when we were actually receiving that data. And we went out and purchased a kind of a cheap WWE championship belt. And so we quarterly or annually, we give the top marketer, whoever got the best closeout, for percent in the box. And we don't own any of the pigs that we sell, and we just we raise them for other people. But when you give these, especially my team, my guys, you give them a competition and something to go after, and just a pride factor. So we let them walk around with the belt and take pictures. You take them out for pizza or something like that too. So that's just one of the things we've done in the past that I thought was really cool that we enjoyed doing.
Has anyone seen any incentive programs based around biosecurity that you want to talk about?
We've actually had a conversation. We've had a conversation with one of the pig owners where they talked about, rather than doing a feed conversion or mortality bonus, just for a contract grower, just adding in like 50 cents a space. And this was somebody pretty high up in a large company, said just the amount of lateral breaks that they had from people just not either following biosecurity or not paying attention to small things, like, all right, we're going to add 50 cents to your contract, and if you get to keep it, but if you break biosecurity through a lateral break, then you lose that, something to that effect. So it's been discussed, and I would say it's probably been discussed with two of them that we work with, but I don't think they have the framework on how you do it, because then how do you prove that it didn't come in through feed? How do you prove that it didn't come in through a feed truck driver or something like that, or an outside vendor? And so it's how you enforce it is, I think, the thing that's going to be hard to determine, but I do think it's probably coming at some point.
Would you kind of piggyback that a little bit, Randy, with also, how the new barn startup, right? Is everything clean? Your kind of your startup checklist, if you will, making sure that the barn is ready for the new groups of pigs, obviously from a maintenance perspective, bird netting, kind of
Yep.
piggyback that as well. Would you do something like that?
Yeah, you could utilize. I mean, I've got a service report that I do weekly, and one of the main areas on that service report is biosecurity. And for my team of employees, we actually put numerical values. My guys like looking at numbers; they like to be graded, and I allotted almost every feed, air, and water were 20 points, and then biosecurity was 20 points. Everything else on our checklist was worth 10. And so if there was an opportunity, even if it wasn't a failure, if there was an biosecurity, we might reduce or deduct those 20 points just to make sure we drive that point home that this is extremely important. But doing your checklist at the beginning of the group and making sure everything is clean, and and even my field advisors, making sure that they're out there doing the pre-fill inspections and making sure that they get everything, all the equipment that they need there before the pigs arrive, and everything is properly cleaned. There's been a lot of times where, and it's unfortunate, you show up to the site and you got pigs coming the next day, and you do a failure on the site inspection. So then you got to get all hands on deck there to get the site ready for the pigs, because you don't want to contaminate that next group on day one. And if we don't get a lot of to wash one of these big sites and have it ready, and so you got to scramble, but it's making sure that everybody knows how important it is for those pigs, because they can't take a big health break, especially with some of these PRRS or PED viruses. I've been part of those groups where I had a group of wean pigs come in at 6,000 pigs arrived and flew with PED on day one, and it was a mess. It was bad.
How about you, Kara? Any cool ideas for you?
When I think about kind of interesting, innovative things in barn we're doing, I would say, I know we've already talked metrics, right? But kind of along the, we've really been pushing for welfare metrics. So just Brad was right on the money, right? We improve on the things that we measure. And so we don't do a lot of measuring of welfare metrics. And so we've been doing some kind of treatment success rates, trying to benchmark how many sows you're treating for what reasons and what your success rate is. And those are really good conversations, because it's hard to just tell people like, hey, treat more. It's much easier to have the conversation of, hey, you're benchmarking lower than some of the other farms in the system. How can we get you so that you're more competitive with everybody else? So to me, that's something, that's a direction our industry needs to go for sure.
No, just with Kara on that, and for producers, if you don't have mobile data entry, making that tracking mechanism becomes so much easier when you are entering your treatments into a record system. Just very quick and easy to run a few reports and sit down with the team, and here we only treated X number of sows, and it just makes it much easier to do that. So I'd highly recommend a mobile entry record system for treatments as well.
Nice piggyback, because I'm kind of going to go down that a little bit. From some of the conversations that I've had recently was really focus on that wean to finish side, the grow out phase, if you will, pork production, and having better visibility. And there's tools out there today, from a sow farm perspective, that'll kind of have, hey, here's kind of some tasks that you need to do, right? I think it's been very helpful for the industry and producers. It's a really cool. Some of those tools out there are really cool, but from a wean to finish, it's like they're getting no love. And that's really where the money is really lost or won, right? I mean, obviously the sow farm side is really important, right? Because of the trickle down effect of what happens in the wean to finish. But there really is not a tool out there, or even like a scoreboard, if you will, to be able to say, hey, where's my immediate focus? Where's that? What are some things that need to be done? Upcoming events, vaccination protocols, or hey, we're loading out pigs here in 2 weeks, or we got feed coming tomorrow, right? As well as some real-time, comparisons against, flow sites, kind of giving some of that real-time feedback, to the caretakers, as well as from the support staff out there to, help communicate visibility. So hopefully we'll see what kind of comes of that.
Well, I really want to make sure we talk about this new campaign that the National Pork Board introduced. They announced the tagline. I got to get all my words right here. So the tagline came out during forum of "Taste What Pork Can Do," and the actual launch of the campaign for consumers is going to happen the middle part of May. And so we'll be hearing more. I'm excited to see more of the look. Got a little bit of a glimpse of what this tagline is. But, I know that you guys, I mean, we all have an opinion when we first hear it. What are your thoughts? Randy, I know that you have had some conversations with some of your team there at Illinois Pork about it. How did the tagline strike you?
I think the consensus with most of us is like, it's not bad. We kind of need to wait and see what the content that's going to go along with it is going to be. But I think everybody that was down at Pork Forum that I talked to, they kind of felt the same way we did when it got introduced at our Illinois Pork Board meeting. is at first you don't know what to make of it, but the more you start thinking about it and which different directions it can go to help promote the industry, I think we're a little more bought in and pretty excited to see how it's going to be a different campaign than what the other ones have been in the past. And I think from my standpoint, it seems like trying to drive demand is really important. We've seen the demand with each generation since the baby boomers on down to Gen X, where I am, and hopefully we can drive that domestic production up a little bit now, because I think that's the future of our industry here in the U.S. is we got to get more people to eat our product and enjoy it like we do.
Any other revelations on that? Different thoughts? Anybody not like it? Anybody um
I
hear any
really like
negativity?
it. I think it's great, and it's like, oh, so simple. Why didn't we think about this years ago? So I think that because a lot of us that have been in the industry for a while are kind of going, oh, I don't know. It's a little bit different. That makes me like it even more, because we really need to think outside the box and not be afraid to say, hey, pork is good. We just got to prepare it right, and pork can taste really really well. So I like it, and hopefully it'll help us gain some more domestic demand.
Yeah, I kind of take it like a challenge myself a little bit, right? It's like horrible with analogies, but like Dirty Harry, right? We're using that shootout, and do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? Well, why don't you try something different when it comes to the pork side, right? And for myself, and I'm a pork consumer, and it is just there are different ways that I can make that food, prepare that food, whether it's a tenderloin or pork chops or ribs, smoking, grilling, in the oven, just different ways to really go outside of my normal pork consumption experience.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited to see how the effort turns out and kind of what happens. I think it's a cool tagline.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit of like, well, this is what you might see a little bit of when it comes to what the campaign itself will look like. But the thing that kind of struck me too, and I talked to quite a few people about it, but if you don't like connect with it, that's maybe okay and maybe good, because it's really not supposed to be about us. But I can't deny that there's a universal nature of it that I'm like, I don't know how, once you really do think about it, like how you can't be challenged. I love that word. I feel challenged by it as well, but also kind of like there's a bit of optimism and excitement around like, oh, this is what it could be. So I don't know if that's my personality or what, but I certainly am excited about it and looking forward to seeing what's next. And I was really encouraged by the Power of Meat report that came out, and hearing about, I don't know if you had seen any of these stories yet, guys, but about the um, millennial generation. Go, Kara. Um, I don't actually know what all of us are, so I'm not going to guess. But anyway, I do know that you are a proclaimed millennial. But anyway, your generation has helped increase the purchases of meat in 2024. I believe it was 500 million more packages of meat were purchased, and the largest percentage of that was due to the older half of millennials who now, she was talking about, they have kids that are hungry all the time and are eating them out of the house, and maybe they're underestimating how many times that, how much to get when they go to the store, so they're going back to the store multiple times throughout the week to pick up meat. And so I do think that's exciting, because all the reports have been telling us that millennials are just not as in on meat. And I don't think we should get crazy overly excited about this, I suppose, right? We keep pushing, but I think that's positive that millennials are increasing their meat purchases. And
As a mom with 3 sons, I can tell you, it takes a lot of meat to feed kids, and they're only getting older. So,
I know it
Take
just gets
whatever
worse.
good news we can get.
yeah, yep, yep, that's good news. So,
No, I love it. Well, okay, so summer's coming up. I guess as we get ready to close out here, guys, I'm looking forward to seeing you all at World Pork Expo. Last year, we kind of all got together a little bit. Hopefully, we can do that again this year. maybe do something while we're there together. But what are some of any advice or any recommendations for people as they get ready for World Pork Expo? It seems like everybody's there, but I'm reminded that not everybody has had the privilege of going. And if you haven't, you should go join us in Des Moines, June 4th and 5th. Any thoughts or recommendations, guys?
Come hungry. You'll eat some good pork.
Definitely
Just
got to have a
partake of
corn
it
dog.
as much as you can.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's the
corn
Super
dogs are
Bowl for
amazing.
the pork industry, man. It's a Super Bowl. It's a
Yeah.
Super Bowl, right? We've got to get pumped up around here, right? Yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, it's the food. But it's also, I mean, everybody is there from a pork industry, right? And it's not just from a US, but it's international as well. And from a vendor perspective to, friends that you don't see very often. I've been going for 20 years. I love it.
Yep, good chance for networking, seeing people you've met or ran across still, through your time in the industry. They might be wearing a different colored shirt with a different logo on it, but it's a lot of the same people you've seen for the last 20 years. And we're all still doing this for one reason or another. And one of it, main one I think is we love raising pigs. And since been doing it for 25 years now, don't see myself ever doing anything else. And there's just a lot of good people in this industry to learn from.
Yeah, give yourself plenty of time because there's just so much going on. If you're just planning on going for a partial day or 3/4 of a day, you're going to miss a lot of things that are there. So give yourself plenty of time because there's a lot of activity there.
Yeah, that's really good advice because you think you can kind of get more done in this little bit of time. Then you get there and you're like, this, I can't even hardly walk anywhere without running into, you know, lots of
Right.
faces that you want to stop and talk to. So I think excellent advice and encourage you to all make sure you stop by the Farm Journal's pork booth. We'd love to see you. We're going to have some live tapings of some of our shows. So we're super excited about that. And we'll be sharing those details soon. But again, I just want to thank you guys for joining us today for the State of the Pork Industry Report, hosted by Farm Journal's Pork and brought to you by Neogen. I really appreciate the information and insights that each of you guys provide each quarter. And I just want to thank all the listeners and viewers who join us as well. We would love to hear more from you about the topics that you'd like to see us discuss next time. So please stay connected with us at porkbusiness.com.